Welcome to today's Explainer. Right off the bat, we're tackling a massive headache that's probably keeping your IT and security teams awake at night. We're talking about navigating these complex digital transformations without completely drowning in alert fatigue. Get this, industry data actually suggests security teams end up ignoring up to 40% of alerts. 40%! Just because of the sheer overwhelming volume. So we're going to dive into a strategy that's rapidly becoming absolutely critical for organizations worldwide to solve this exact mess: Unified Enterprise Vulnerability Assessment.
So let me ask you a really fundamental question right up front. Are you actually managing cybersecurity risk, or are you just counting vulnerabilities? Because in a modern enterprise, simply finding security bugs, that's just not going to cut it anymore. If all you're doing is tallying up issues on a giant spreadsheet, honestly, you're already way behind the attackers.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our quick roadmap for today. We're going to hit the modern security challenge, why those traditional approaches are failing us, introduce the unified assessment solution, break down its core pillars, and then finally, we'll look at the future of cybersecurity. Let's get to it.
Starting with Section 1, the modern security challenge.
Look, we all know digital transformation is fantastic for business agility, but man, it creates a sprawling, fragmented nightmare for the security teams trying to protect these setups. We are way past the days of protecting a neat little network perimeter with a single firewall. Modern enterprises are operating across hybrid clouds, remote endpoints, APIs, and containerized microservices. And we can't forget shadow IT. You know, like that unsanctioned cloud server the marketing team just spun up over the weekend, or an exposed S3 bucket that nobody bothered to lock down. This massive expansion of the attack surface introduces a level of complexity that those older tools literally just aren't built to handle.
Which brings us directly to Section 2, failing traditional approaches.
Historically, vulnerability assessment was this highly linear, almost robotic process. You deploy a standalone scanner, run your scheduled assessments, generate some massive 500-page PDF report, sit down to review it, and then eventually assign out the remediation tasks. And while this old 5-step process absolutely does find technical issues, it has a fatal flaw for today's world. It operates in a total silo and entirely lacks context.
And here is the harsh reality of applying that old-school process to modern infrastructure. You get a total operational collapse. Because environments are so vast now, large enterprises are generating thousands, sometimes millions of vulnerability findings. Security teams are just drowning in a sea of alerts with zero context. It is literally like trying to find a needle in a haystack of needles. Teams start treating critical alerts like unread promotional emails simply because there are just too many of them. Without proper prioritization, you've got people wasting days fixing low-impact issues on internal servers, while the truly critical internet-facing risks are just buried in the noise. It's a one-way ticket to operational burnout.
So, a major paradigm shift has to happen here. We have got to move away from the old focus. We can't just be asking how many vulnerabilities exist in our environment. We need to leave that in the past and adopt a strategic new focus. Which vulnerabilities create the highest cybersecurity risk and provide attackers with the greatest opportunity? Finding the bug is only step one. We have to stop managing vulnerability volume and start managing actual cybersecurity risk.
Let's move into Section 3, the Unified Assessment Solution.
Enter Unified Enterprise Vulnerability Assessment, or UEVA. This is the modern strategy that brings multiple security capabilities under one single roof. We're talking about combining asset discovery, risk analysis, continuous monitoring, and security intelligence. So instead of juggling isolated reports from a dozen disconnected tools, you get a single source of truth about your entire attack surface. This is what shifts your security posture from reactive scanning to proactive cyber exposure reduction.
Now, let's break down exactly how this unified strategy operates in the real world in Section 4, Core Pillars of UEVA. The very first pillar is complete asset visibility. The simple truth is you absolutely cannot protect what you can't see. So many devastating breaches don't happen because of some crazy, sophisticated zero-day attack. Nope, they happen through a forgotten, unpatched legacy server sitting in a dev environment or some outdated system left over from an acquisition 5 years ago. UEVA creates a centralized map of your entire digital reality: hardware, software, cloud workloads, endpoints, effectively wiping out those really dangerous blind spots. The second pillar is advanced vulnerability identification. Modern identification has to go way beyond basic network scanning. A truly unified approach evaluates weaknesses across multiple, complex layers. It spans the infrastructure for missing patches, applications for logic or injection flaws, cloud environments for misconfigured permissions, and even the software supply chain for outdated third-party libraries. I mean, think about the lingering risks from the whole Log4j scramble a while back. Pulling all these findings into one unified process is absolutely essential if you want a complete picture of your risk.
The third pillar is risk-based prioritization. Now, remember those millions of alerts we were just talking about? When you start factoring in asset importance, exposure level, exploit availability, and threat intelligence, that actual critical business risk, that tiny slice of the pie, shrinks drastically. A critical vulnerability on a completely isolated internal system is actually a much lower business priority than a medium-severity bug on your main internet-facing database. By focusing on that small, critical slice, your security teams are managing real risk, not just grinding through volume.
The final core pillars are continuous monitoring and automated intelligence. Because organizations are spinning up new apps and adding cloud services constantly, an assessment you ran months or even weeks ago is practically ancient history. Point-in-time scanning is totally dead because attack surfaces change every single day. UVA combines machine-speed automated continuous discovery with human-focused security intelligence. This lets you detect configuration changes way faster, allowing your team to respond before attackers can take advantage of any newly exposed weaknesses.
And that brings us to our final section, the future of cybersecurity. To actually pull off a UEVA strategy at an enterprise scale, organizations really need a unified platform. Take the ESPIN scanner appliance, for example. Adopting an integrated security appliance like this is what practically enables organizations to deploy the strategy without the usual headaches. You get simplified deployment without all those disconnected processes, you get centralized management of your vulnerability findings, and you get consistent, robust security control across both your traditional data centers and your modern hybrid environments.
Looking ahead, the future of vulnerability management is fundamentally proactive. This means completely ditching static reports in favor of intelligent, integrated operations. We are firmly entering the era of continuous exposure management, AI-assisted security analysis, and automated risk prioritization workflows. It's all about knowing exactly how a vulnerability impacts your actual business risk at any given millisecond.
Let's wrap up this explainer with one final provocative thought. I want you to take a hard look at your own enterprise security posture and ask yourself, is your organization merely counting bugs, or are you actually managing cyber exposure? Those traditional scanning checklists are obsolete. Modern organizations require complete asset visibility and highly intelligent risk prioritization if they want to stand a chance against modern threats. It is time to stop drowning in alerts and start managing your risk. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.